When the edifice you stand on comes crashing down, when everything around you goes up in a blaze, what's left? They say adversity is the best teacher, but that is very hard to put in practice, especially in the face of a massive gas leak in one of India's most reputed and oldest oil and gas companies. What was left after Sam's OIL had a gas leak that turned into a fire? The answer they would discover was right there in the center of the fire. They knew that their only way out of the crisis was to ride through it to the other side. Sitting inside the burning. The disaster struck OIL in two parts. First, one of its most productive units, gas well number 5, started leaking gas on the 27th of May 2020. Then, on the 9th of June, when a plan was in place to cap the leak, the gas caught fire. To start with, the man at the helm of operations, Pankaj Goswami's heart sank.
If you ask me, I'm a very religious man. I have strong belief on God. But I think this time God decided to test me for a long time.
A new route was required to lay a pipeline over the water body for fire control operations. The army had to be called in to make a new floating bridge. Miraculously, they delivered in record time. Just 36 hours later, a bridge was ready. Just when the team thought its problems were now solved. A torrential downpour resulted in massive flooding across Assam. The bridge was now a floating river, and the team was stuck again. Each morning, workers and top management would be ready to start work at 7 a.m. But it was not possible to work on a flooded well site, especially since the nature of the disaster was to do with a hydrocarbon leak and carcasses of metal at the well site that could transmit heat and electricity and cause electrical shocks. On several mornings, teams would assemble and be told they had to turn around and head back home. Otindra Roy Chaudhary found as executive director that this downtime was very trying for workers and managers alike.
Now your whole team is there with fully motivated. From Duliazan, you wake up at 4 in the morning, 5 you move, you're there, and suddenly you find that no, today I cannot work. We have to take a call, and calling of operation is not easy. Each day, each hour is very, very crucial for us.
On the flip side, the flooding provided a continuous supply of water that was used to create water umbrellas to cool the well site so that the major task of clearing it of debris like earth-moving machines and parts of the rig that had fallen could be done. This in turn would clear the path to the actual well so that the leak could eventually be plugged or capped and the fire put out. In this constant battle with uncertainty, what stood OIL in good stead was what it learned over time and a century and a half of dealing with it. In the year 2005, there was a similar blowout around 80 kilometers from the present site in a lush green tea estate called Dikom. Samar Chalia, who lives and works there, remembers it like it was yesterday.
So this is the place where that blowout took place. There's a similar blowout in Baghjan, almost same. What I'm trying to tell you that you'll have to have patience, and you should not disrupt the restoration process. You'll have to allow the agency to do the things.
In laboratories managed by the company, OIL scientists developed algae and bacteria that eat condensate and oil. Soil tarred black with petroleum was restored to its proper state. Crucial to this story is how OIL learned from this catastrophe and put DICOM back on track again. Much of the damage done was mitigated.
We have got only two business in the industry. One is oil, and second is tea industry. At least 5 million people are directly involved. Both the industry is interrelated. It has got a huge contribution to the economy. Tea is definitely dependent on oil because we need gas from the Oil India, and they are supplying gas to fire our tea. This is the main fuel.
Back on ground zero, a new strategy for dousing the fire was being put in place. At the helm was Mike and his team from Alert, putting their heads together with OIL and India's biggest hydrocarbon company, ONGC.
And I've always believed that every single individual involved in the operations is a valued member of that team. And accordingly, we have to protect and have a lookout for the interests of everybody involved in the project, not just our six-man team. We have very specific protocols and procedures that we will apply in every operation.
Having arrived a few days before the well caught fire, Mike and his team climbed up onto the gas rig to get a first-hand view of the risks involved in closing the leaking well. Between the plan and its execution were a series of obstacles that made life on a rig a constant challenge for all concerned. After the debris was cleared from the well site, Mike and his team had to remove or unplug the burnt parts of the wellhead before they could place the blowout preventer on top. The burnt parts, however, were lined with particles of flammable petroleum or condensate, and this caught fire. Despite that, Mike and his team carried on with the fire literally chasing them, until the damaged parts of the wellhead were successfully removed. OIL's resident chief executive and crisis manager, Dilip Kumar Das, said these were moments of despondency.
Things have been not very good for us. Maybe luck is not with us because the time we think that we're approaching the victory, we're going to do it, suddenly something happens, you can go back three steps back. One of my old friend who has retired very recently, he said, "तुम बस अपने आप से मत हारो, तुम्हें और कोई नहीं हरा सकता."
Our own team filming the unfolding blowout and its containment got a taste of just how tough things got. As things were moving towards the capping of the well, the fire briefly stopped burning at the well. This was actually more dangerous because it meant that the gas was still leaking, but the petroleum wasn't getting burnt up and consumed by a fire. So it was spreading its flammable particles and condensate all over the place.
We have oil flowing on our bodies.
Some of this fell on us, and we had to run for cover or risk bursting into flames. As we ran, we saw Matt from Alert do what seemed very strange, but now it made perfect sense. He shot flaming arrows into the well so it would catch fire again. To keep it alive until the gas leak could be plugged. Some of the problems the team faced were about the essential nature of each workday. Close to the well, it was almost 80 degrees. Water jets are sprayed on site continuously, and only after an hour of this is the site cool enough for work to begin. By the time the gas well at Baghjan caught fire, there were close to 10,000 people living in makeshift camps. OIL worked doubly hard to make this life away from home as comfortable as possible, with food, health camps, and yoga classes provided for.
Because it's a crisis kind of a situation, you don't know what is coming tomorrow. Yes, it's a difficult situation for people to leave their homes and live in the camps, but it's also not safe to leave them in the homes which are close by to the blowout location. End of the day, the comfort of a home is home. That cannot be replicated in the camps. Whenever an unfortunate situation like this happens, where people have to move out of their homes, go and live in camps, they will definitely have anger against the institution, which is very normal. If I were in their place, even I would have felt the same way.
When a few weeks had gone by and the fire was still not put out, angry villagers from the Baghjan area close to the well site went out onto the streets and blocked the access points for the OIL staff in protest. They wanted the fire to be put out, and they would not clear the road until it was done, they said. On that day, Pankaj Goswami left home at 6 a.m. and found that he wasn't being able to make his way back home. By now, his wife was beside herself with worry.
मैं वो मैसेज किया शायद आज नहीं जा पाऊँगा, तो बहुत डर लग गया। मैंने कैसे अभी क्या करेगा, खाना पीना तो है ही नहीं, ऊपर से बारिश है, तो सोएगा, सोने के लिए भी जगह नहीं है।
We have decided at around 12 o'clock that we'll have to go out somehow because midnight, it was midnight, 12 o'clock. So we have decided to walk down to the walk down from the site. Then we walked around 2 kilometers from the site, and there was some negotiation with the local groups. Then finally we could come back from site at around 2:30 a.m. morning. So we reached at home by 4:30. So it was really a very difficult moment for all of us and her family also. They were also expecting that people will come back.
Mrs. Goswami's fears were echoed by another oil man's wife, whose husband, Onfar Ali, was working as Chief General Manager for Production Group.
The protest was to some extent genuine, I should say, because they all are also going a part of this whole crisis. They have lost their homes, they have lost their belongings, and which they treasure after so much. He came at 4 o'clock and somehow there was whatever charge was left in his phone. He just gave me a ring that he's at the door, and I saw him. He was completely drenched from head to toe, and for a moment I simply could not believe my eyes, because it was not like soaking in rainwater. I was not able to ask him as to what happened, because I could not believe. I haven't seen him like that.
While villagers were understandably on edge, OIL took a stand that spoke volumes about its resilience and empathy.
For me, my responsibility at that point of time was to make an honest assessment of what happened at that point of time, because there was certain wrong information was in circulation in the media, and that created huge panic.
For people at OIL, from top management to the workers, unwinding at the end of each day was absolutely key to facing challenges that lay ahead.
After a hard day's work, sometimes in the bunkhouse we sit together, we have a cup of tea, we try and talk to them, find out their problems. So all of this has been helpful, and so far we have found that our people are a motivated lot, and they are willing to continue at the site till such time the fire is not doused successfully.
The one thing keeping every oil and gas person going in the crisis was about never losing sight of the big picture. In the most trying time, And this was definitely it for OIL. It was even more crucial to focus on why they were fighting this fight in the first place.
Blowout is the most undesirable thing in the life of an oil man, but it is not that it is uncommon. And another thing is, as I repeatedly talk about the potential of this basin, the Assam and Assam Arakan basin has got a huge potential. In terms of yet to find potential, it is more than 5.5 billion tons. So the 5.5 billion tons of yet to find potential is locked up in Northeast, which we very passionately want to unfold and then, make it useful for the country. That's it.
Now the days have come when we have to produce gas, and we have got very, very huge reservoirs of gas, and we have projected that our gas production will be double by 23-24. As far as this Baghjan is concerned, this is considered to be future of Oil India, because our major production is likely to come from there.
At the well site, it was time to run one last set of checks before placing the blowout preventer on the wellhead, capping it and extinguishing the fire. The gas leak is plugged by injecting a special dense chemical mud into the nozzles of the blowout preventer, sort of like stuffing its nose so it can't exhale more gas. Once the gas is blocked, the fire will slowly die out because it's getting no fresh fuel, which is its fodder. It was so close to the finish line, and then another brief setback. The pressure at the wellhead was so great that the big 90-foot-long metal trolley meant to lift the device onto the wellhead keeled over. The next few months from the catastrophe, in August to the end of November 2020, were tense. It was clear that well number 5 was an angry child. The pressure at which she released gas would have to be taken into account and existing plans reworked by the guardians of the site. One blowout preventer wasn't going to cut it. OIL needed multiple blowout preventers to work simultaneously, which needed to be constructed like one giant stack to form a formidable tower. This tower was rather appropriately called a snubbing unit and was eventually requisitioned from Canada. But OIL needed to ensure that the enormous pressure of gas that this well was spewing out does not further damage the wellhead while installing this snubbing unit. So it was decided that the gas would be distributed and channeled into 3 different directions, which shares the pressure load over the wellhead after the successful installation of the blowout preventer. 2 of the distribution lines were channeled in a way that would burn the hydrocarbons in the air. And the 3rd channel was directed to the nearby production unit. The gas collected here would be reused, making the process more energy efficient.
The first success we got through was through putting up this blowout preventer. By the time we could completely kill the well, since it was still producing the gas, a large part of the gas we diverted and produced from there. We could recover a major portion of that losses through producing the diversion of that gas through our other producing installations. So it's a large investor base company has. We have a responsibility to all our shareholders. It is a very, very positive aspect on our behalf that we could do this and avoid some more losses.
On 21st October, the world's largest aircraft was deployed to carry the snubbing unit from Canada to Kolkata. It finally reached the well site at Baghjan in Assam on 3rd November. Now the enormous snubbing unit had to be placed onto the wellhead. This took 2 days. A chain of pipes that was 3,950 meters long was inserted into the wellhead and filled with sludge technically known as mud to suppress the pressure and fill the well. This process was achieved only because the snubbing unit could withstand the pressure of 10,000 psi and push down the pipes filled with mud. Cracks were sealed, and on November 15, 2020, 6 months after the Baghjan well leaked, the gas was snuffed out. And on 3rd December, this angry well was declared finally capped. It was the end of a life-altering journey for the people who make our world go round. They had lost 3 of their own men in the process. There had been great suffering, and now was the time for a great catharsis. People displaced from their homes started returning home. The expat team from Alert could go back to their families. After spending so much time at the site, the oil directors could go back with a smile on their face. Pankaj Goswami could go back to his wife and children and sleep peacefully. As could every worker at OIL. With an unshakable faith in life that came from knowing what rupture looks like, feeling its fragility, sitting inside the dark center of a flaming fire, through which light shines its brightest.